I am your coolest daddy.
Constant touching.
Very codependent, very codependent.
I'm gonna have a panic attack and I'm gonna leave.
No, we've actually really enjoyed being with each other. He's one of my favorite people in the world.
Oh my god, babe. Did you hear the news?
My whole family just got in a house fire.
No, I just got cast in a Pedro Pascal movie. I know, right? Fuck, isn't that awesome?
Oh my god. Oh no.
Don't worry, babe. I'm not gonna leave you now that I'm an A-list celebrity actor.
It's been a dream to join the MCU. The movie is called The Fantastic Four. I'll confess, I did all my stretching for
Let's see your nails.
Oh yes, of course.
They're very nice. Yeah, they're very beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, I'm a heartthrob.
I don't know why this guy makes me so uncomfortable.
What happens when Hollywood's most charming actor starts to feel not so charming? What if the man behind the viral clips, the award speeches, and the emotional interviews wasn't the soft-spoken icon we've been sold, but something else entirely?
Whether they like it or not, they're never getting...
He won't leave me alone.
For years, Pedro Pascal has been the internet's golden boy. He's the daddy of TikTok, the vulnerable tough guy of The Last of Us, the stoic Mandalorian, the face of multiple billion-dollar franchises. But behind the carefully curated Instagram posts, the affectionate red carpet moments, and the breathless media coverage, something strange has been unfolding, slowly, quietly, but now unmistakably.
There's a lot of Marvel movies. If you're in the top 5, you're doing well.
Because while Pedro's star has risen higher than almost anyone in recent memory, the cracks in that rise are starting to show. And they're not small. From eyebrow-raising behavior toward co-stars to a public persona that suddenly feels more like strategy than sincerity. From awkward viral moments that fans brushed off to full-on speculation that something is seriously off. We're watching a man who was once celebrated for his emotional sensitivity now drawing concern for the exact same thing. Is it just overexposure? Or is Pedro Pascal a carefully engineered product? A role so perfectly crafted by Hollywood that we forgot to question if it was real? And more importantly, what happens when that illusion finally slips? Because behind every carefully lit interview, every viral meme, and every glowing headline, there might just be a much more uncomfortable story no one wants to talk about. Let's talk about it. If you blinked, you probably missed it. Just a few years ago, Pedro Pascal was a character actor, reliable, understated, tucked into the background of prestige television and cult dramas. Narcos, Game of Thrones, a handful of guest spots. He was the kind of guy you recognized but didn't follow. And then suddenly, everything changed. In what felt like the span of a single year, Pedro Pascal became the face of Hollywood. Not just a star, a symbol, leading The Mandalorian, starring in The Last of Us, cast as Reed Richards in Fantastic Four. He didn't just appear on magazine covers, he took over the news cycle. TikTok clips, red carpet edits, emotional sound bites, he was everywhere, all at once. Now, here's the thing. Hollywood loves an underdog story, but Pedro's wasn't just a comeback, it was a construction. His image was precise, vulnerable, emotional, socially aligned, just awkward enough to feel relatable. He didn't give off traditional alpha male energy. He leaned into softness, sensitivity, struggle. He was one of the good guys, the kind who doesn't have a PR crisis. He fixes other people's. But behind the rapid rise was something even more interesting, the intentionality of it all. Because the roles he played didn't vary much. In The Mandalorian, he's a reluctant protector. In The Last of Us, a haunted father figure. In press interviews, he's the anxious but lovable leading man, always quick with self-deprecating charm and wide-eyed sincerity. It all felt so curated. He became the face of masculinity 2.0, gentle, respectful, humble, yet confident, a man of the times. But as his career skyrocketed, fans started noticing something strange. That image never slipped, not once. No late-night scandal, no off-the-cuff meltdown, not even a viral misstep. And in today's hyper-exposed celebrity culture, that's not just rare, it's suspicious. Actors mess up, they get caught in awkward moments, make bad jokes, or simply say the wrong thing. But Pedro, he seemed untouchable, perfectly polished, media trained to the millisecond. And every move, from emotional interviews about anxiety, to his social stances, to his physical interactions with fans and co-stars, seemed to fit the brand too perfectly. Which begs the question, was Pedro Pascal rising because he was real, or because he was useful? See, Hollywood isn't just about talent, it's about timing and branding. And Pedro, he became a brand. Latino, but not too ethnic, ambiguous enough to appeal to all demographics, socially correct but charmingly quirky, masculine but emotionally soft, awkward but never threatening. He was a walking, talking algorithm match, someone who could star in sci-fi, drama, superhero films, and activism reels all in the same week. And studios loved it. They didn't just cast Pedro Pascal, they relied on him. And that kind of reliance, it comes with protection. It comes with media coaching. It comes with a press cycle that shields, distracts, and reframes. Because when someone becomes that valuable to the system, they don't just represent themselves, they represent the machine. And machines don't like cracks. Which brings us to the next part of this story. story, because lately those cracks have been showing. And they started, very publicly, with Fantastic Four. By now, you've probably seen the clips. Pedro Pascal stroking Vanessa Kirby's face during a press interview, wrapping his arms around her, whispering something into her ear. She's visibly pregnant, engaged to another man. And yet, the energy isn't just close, it's intimate, and the internet couldn't ignore it. People weren't outraged. They were unsettled. Not because it was a one-time slip, but because it was part of a pattern. A slow-burning realization that Pedro Pascal, Hollywood's most inoffensive leading man, might not be playing the role we thought he was. Because this wasn't just about one moment. It was about the repeated moments. The viral footage with Sarah Paulson, where he holds her too tightly, rubs her back, whispers something into her ear. She stiffens. The interaction doesn't scream affection. It screams performance. The red carpet comment to Dakota Johnson about her feet, a joke that some called quirky, others found uncomfortable. The resurfaced moment with Willem Dafoe's wife, starting as friendly, shifting quickly into awkward, while Willem's face hardens. Individually, you could brush these off. Collectively, they start to form a picture, not a but of a man who's grown too comfortable being adored, a man who's learned that he can get away with anything, as long as he says it with a grin and blames it on anxiety. And here's the thing, Pedro's built-in excuse has always been his vulnerability. He talks about it constantly, how he struggles with anxiety, how he uses physical touch to stay grounded, how stress helps him stay sharp on set. He presents as deeply emotional, deeply affected, and for a while, that felt real. It made him human. But when you see that explanation used again and again, always when the interactions start to feel a little off, you start to wonder, is this really coping, or is it cover? Because the Pedro Pascal brand is built on relatability. He's not just acting, he's sharing his emotions, his identity. He's transparent. But when that transparency starts to feel strategic, not sincere, the illusion begins to crack. And Fantastic Four may be the moment it shatters. Why? Because this time, it's not fans or tabloids talking, it's his co-star. Vanessa Kirby hasn't said much. She hasn't gone public with accusations. But in a world where silence is a statement, her distance speaks volumes. Her tone during interviews has shifted. Her body language has changed. And for an industry that scrutinizes every glance, every reaction, every viral clip, people noticed. It doesn't take a press release to recognize discomfort. And when you consider the fact that Disney itself reportedly pulled a Fantastic Four featurette focused entirely on Pedro, that's not just PR damage control. That's a warning shot. Because when studios start cutting your screen time instead of promoting you, it means one thing: they're nervous. And nervous studios are dangerous places for rising stars. So the question becomes, what exactly are they nervous about? We'll explore that next, including how Pedro's social press strategy and media protection may be the real reason why he keeps getting a pass, and why that pass might be running out. Pedro Pascal was supposed to be the crown jewel of Fantastic Four. The Marvel reboot had struggled with fan approval for years, but this casting, it was bold, exciting, buzzworthy. Pedro wasn't just joining the MCU, he was headlining it. As Reed Richards, the leader of Marvel's first family, Pedro was meant to bring both gravitas and charm, but instead, the press tour became a slow-motion disaster, and the first spark came from someone Hollywood didn't expect: Vanessa Kirby. On paper, she was the perfect counterbalance, elegant, serious, respected. But behind the photo ops and premiere smiles, something felt off. It started in the interviews. Her guarded posture, the quick side glances, the tight smiles when Pedro touched her arm, or her face. In one now viral clip, Pascal gently strokes Vanessa's cheek mid-conversation. The internet's reaction wasn't laughter, it was discomfort. Now, to some, this might seem harmless. Affection between co-stars is common, but the context made it different. Because Vanessa Kirby wasn't just his co-star, she was also pregnant, engaged to her partner, and visibly trying to maintain space. And Pedro? He kept closing it. His behavior wasn't aggressive, it was familiar. Too familiar. The kind of comfort that might be normal between longtime friends in private, but on a press tour, on camera, with a pregnant woman who clearly wasn't reciprocating, it didn't feel like bonding. It felt like boundary blurring, and people noticed fast. Comment sections filled with confusion. Not hate, not outrage, just that weird collective feeling of, what are we watching right now? Some blamed Vanessa, accusing her of being unprofessional. Others defended Pedro, saying it was harmless, even sweet. But a growing number of viewers felt something else entirely. Disbelief that no one was addressing it. And then came the rumors, quiet at first, then louder. Disney reportedly canceled a Fantastic Four featurette that centered entirely on Pedro. Sources hinted that Bob Iger himself was involved, unhappy with how the press tour was going. And worst of all, Pedro's press appearances were being reduced, interviews cut, press junkets shortened, visibility scaled back. For someone who'd once been the centerpiece of every red carpet, it was a major shift. Studios don't cut visibility for their lead star unless they see a risk. And the risk here wasn't box office numbers, it was Pedro himself. This wasn't the Pedro Pascal the media had promoted, the emotionally sensitive, endlessly likable, anxious but grounded man everyone trusted. This was someone people were beginning to question. And Vanessa Kirby, whether she meant to or not, had become the face of that discomfort. She didn't need to speak out. Her silence was the statement. In a world obsessed with optics, one change in tone from a respected actress is louder than a headline. And the message was clear. Something was off. And if that wasn't enough, the footage kept coming. Not just from Fantastic Four, but from Pedro's entire career. And once you start seeing the pattern, it's hard to unsee. At first, it seemed like quirks. Pedro Pascal was the touchy one, the affectionate co-star, the guy who gave long hugs, held hands during interviews, rubbed backs, whispered compliments. Fans loved it. It felt genuine, sweet, like a man comfortable with his emotions in a way most leading men weren't. But as more footage surfaced, the vibe shifted from quirky to questionable. Let's rewind. Sarah Paulson, longtime friend, seen multiple times with Pedro on red carpets. In one clip, he slides an arm around her, rubs her back slowly, whispers something directly into her ear. Her face doesn't soften. It tightens. Her posture goes rigid. The moment passes quickly, but you can see it. That static tension. And people ask, is this how friends act? Or is Pedro hiding behind the shield of familiarity? Then there's the clip with Dakota Johnson, casually joking that Pedro borrows her clothes and once told her she should open an OnlyFans for her feet. It gets a laugh. Awkward, forced, short. And while some defended it as inside humor, others asked the obvious. If any other actor made that joke, would we still be laughing? Or the resurfaced moment with Willem Dafoe's wife. Pedro, mid-conversation, shifts the vibe completely, leaning in, getting a little too close. Willem's smile disappears. His body language hardens. The tension is sudden and unmistakable, and that's when the pattern emerges. Pedro Pascal doesn't make one mistake. He makes a series of almosts. Almost inappropriate, almost too familiar, almost crossing a line, but always playing it off with charm. And when called out, the explanation is always the same. He's anxious. He uses touch to calm himself. It's how he connects with people. And maybe that's true. Maybe Pedro's behavior really is rooted in nervous energy and emotional need. But here's the problem. Intent doesn't erase impact. When women look visibly uncomfortable, when co-stars stiffen mid-touch, when body language says back off, but he keeps leaning in. At some point, the quirks stop being quirky. They become questions. Because Pedro Pascal isn't just an actor. He's a brand, a symbol, a product Hollywood has packaged and sold to us as the ideal man for the modern era. Sensitive but not soft, social but not polarizing, touchy but not threatening. But if all of that is part of a role, a character built for mass appeal, then what's actually behind the curtain? And more importantly, why is no one in Hollywood willing to ask? Because for every awkward moment, for every questionable interaction, Pedro gets the same response from the industry. Silence. No call-outs, no op-eds, no consequences. He remains the face of franchises, the subject of fluff pieces, the darling of the media cycle. And that tells us one thing. Pedro Pascal isn't just popular. He's protected, but protection always comes at a cost. And when it finally breaks, when the public catches up to the pattern, the fall is that much harder. Pedro Pascal doesn't just play emotional characters. He is one. At least that's what we've been told. From the very beginning of his rise to superstardom, Pedro has been incredibly open about his mental health. He's described anxiety as something wired into his chemistry. He's called it a creative tool, a performance edge. And in interview after interview, he's explained that when things get overwhelming, he turns to physical touch, that reaching out literally helps keep him grounded. It's vulnerable. It's relatable. And at first, it felt refreshing. A man in the spotlight admitting to struggle. But now, the very thing that made Pedro lovable is starting to raise new questions. Because what happens when that vulnerability feels less like truth and more like cover? Here's the uncomfortable part no one wants to say out loud. If Pedro Pascal wasn't Pedro Pascal, if he didn't have the soft voice, the nervous laugh, the carefully disheveled charm, would we still see his behavior as harmless? Would we still accept anxiety as the reason he touches pregnant co-stars or makes borderline suggestive jokes to women on camera? Because lately, what once felt like authenticity is starting to feel like deflection. When fans raise concerns, the explanation is already waiting. He's just emotionally expressive. He's neurodivergent. He's not creepy. He's anxious. And those labels carry weight. They buy grace. They frame criticism as cruelty. But here's the truth. A mental health challenge doesn't excuse making others uncomfortable. Anxiety might explain behavior, but it doesn't erase the impact. And it definitely doesn't erase a pattern. And that pattern keeps growing. Pedro's interactions, whether it's touching co-stars, leaning into physical contact, or speaking in ways that toe the line of professionalism, are always followed by some version of that's just how he connects with people. But imagine another actor doing the same. Imagine someone without Pedro's public persona putting hands on a visibly pregnant woman during an interview, or joking about feet pics with a co-star. Would they get a pass? Or would the internet be on fire within minutes? What makes Pedro different? The answer is branding. Pedro Pascal's entire image is engineered around emotional transparency. He cries in interviews. He talks about family trauma. He shares his struggles. And over time, those struggles have become armor. Because when your audience sees you as broken, humble, and healing, they're far more willing to forgive you. You're not a threat. You're not a manipulator. You're the anxious boy trying his best. But behind that forgiveness, a quiet truth is starting to form. Pedro's vulnerability isn't just relatable. It's useful. It shields him from scrutiny. It makes him harder to criticize. And in a media landscape obsessed with mental health and soft masculinity, Pedro Pascal has become the poster child. But here's the twist. The more he leans into that role, the more performed it begins to feel. There's a word for this: strategic vulnerability. It's when emotional openness becomes a tool, not to connect, but to control perception. It makes people trust you, sympathize with you, and ignore your red flags. And in Pedro's case, it may be the very thing keeping the system from holding him accountable. Because anxiety anxiety, real or not, doesn't entitle someone to cross boundaries. And emotional openness, no matter how moving, isn't an excuse for discomfort. It raises a haunting question. Is Pedro Pascal's vulnerability real, or is it part of the role? And more importantly, who benefits from keeping that question unanswered? Let's be completely honest for a second. If any other actor behaved the way Pedro Pascal has in public, repeated physical affection with visibly uncomfortable co-stars, flirting jokes that toe the line, whispers, back rubs, lingering hands, would the media ignore it? Would the headlines stay quiet? Of course not. We've seen actors lose entire careers over less. One awkward red carpet moment, one off-color joke, one uncomfortable stare, and suddenly they're trending for all the wrong reasons. But Pedro? He gets glowing profile pieces, softball interviews, cover stories calling him Hollywood's sweetheart. And no matter how many viral moments go sideways, the media keeps pushing the same narrative. Pedro Pascal is charming. Pedro Pascal is harmless. Pedro Pascal is one of the good guys. But here's where things get really suspicious. Gina Carano, remember her? Pedro's former co-star on The Mandalorian. She shared controversial social opinions on social media, and she was gone, fired, removed, her character erased from future projects. No second chances. Pedro, on the other hand, he's made his fair share of social statements too, some of them just as provocative, some more. He insulted people online in a now-deleted post. He publicly slammed public figures over legal rulings. He's repeatedly used his platform to make bold, emotionally charged statements, even when they're unrelated to the projects he's promoting. But Pedro didn't get punished. He got promoted. How is that fair? How does one actor lose everything for having an opinion, while another gains more power? The answer is simple. Pedro Pascal plays the game the right way. His views align with the studio's. His messaging is safe, not because it's mild, but because it matches the values the industry wants to project. And that's the secret. In Hollywood today, it's not about whether you speak out. It's about what you say and who you're supporting when you say it. Pedro's social, whether genuine or not, are perfectly aligned with a dominant narrative. He's pro everything the system wants to amplify. He's never really controversial, just controversial enough to get praised. And because of that, the media doesn't touch him. Not because they haven't noticed the red flags, but because he's too useful. He's the face of the new Hollywood man. Latino, progressive, vulnerable, marketable, a man who can cry on camera, endorse the right causes, and headline billion-dollar franchises. Pedro Pascal isn't just safe, he's strategically untouchable. But here's the thing about immunity. It never lasts forever. Because the public, they're catching on. They're starting to see that Pedro's behavior isn't being ignored by accident. It's being protected. And when that protection cracks, when the mask slips, the fallout is always bigger. Because when the media builds you up without criticism, the crash doesn't come with a warning. It comes all at once. Pedro Pascal isn't just an actor. He's not just a talented guy with range. He's something far more powerful and far more deliberate. He's a symbol, a product of modern Hollywood branding, someone who checks every cultural box, plays every approved role, and reflects back to the industry the exact values it wants to promote. Let's break it down. He's Latino, but light-skinned enough to be cast in traditionally white roles without controversy. He's physically ambiguous, which makes him accessible across all fandoms, without ever having to define or defend who he is. He's emotional, but never angry. Soft-spoken, but never timid. Socially correct, but always charming about it. In short, Pedro Pascal is everything the modern entertainment system wants you to believe is safe masculinity. And that image isn't just marketable, it's profitable. Studios don't just cast Pedro because he fits the role. They cast him because he fits the narrative. He's the guy who can star in a sci-fi series and make headlines for quoting social movements. He can be on late-night shows crying about anxiety one day, then cuddling co-stars awkwardly on camera the next, and both are treated the same, admirably. Pedro doesn't get PR crises. He gets viral moments. He doesn't get called out. He gets celebrated. And it's not an accident, because when Hollywood finds someone who can act, influence, and signal the right virtues all in one package, they don't just promote him, they protect him. Pedro is safe to the point of being untouchable. He's not risky, he's reliable. Every role he plays, from grieving father to masked hero to awkward activist, reflects the emotional blueprint Hollywood wants to push. And over time, the man behind the mask has become harder and harder to see. Because when you build a career around being the good guy, the moment people start questioning your behavior, the whole house of cards begins to tremble. That's why the media stays silent, why studios shield him, why co-stars say nothing even when the cameras show everything. Pedro Pascal isn't just a person anymore. He's a platform. And for Hollywood, that makes him more valuable than truth, more powerful than criticism, and more protected than anyone else. But every system eventually shows its seams, and Pedro's image, it's starting to unravel. Because once you notice that everything feels like branding, you start asking the question that makes the whole illusion collapse. If it's all this perfectly constructed, what is it hiding? Pedro Pascal has never had a scandal, no major backlash, no career-threatening drama, no serious public reckoning. But maybe that's the problem, because reality always slips through eventually. And lately, more and more people are realizing the Pedro Pascal we've been shown doesn't quite match the Pedro Pascal Pascal we're seeing. The evidence isn't loud, it's subtle. A pattern of awkward interactions, a co-star's silence, a canceled featurette, a shift in tone from glowing admiration to growing discomfort. And now, the whispers are louder than ever. Something's off about Pedro Pascal, but you can't prove it. It's become a meme, a joke, a half-serious internet mantra. But behind every meme is a feeling, and this one is gaining traction. Because for all the branding, all the vulnerability, all the media coverage, something still doesn't feel right. Why does he keep crossing boundaries, but no one says anything? Why does he stay just this side of inappropriate, but never face consequences? Why does his charm feel less natural and more like a rehearsed act? Because it might be, and what we're witnessing now may not be a scandal in the traditional sense, but something even more devastating, a loss of trust. The same fans who once adored Pedro Pascal are starting to feel skeptical. The same moments that used to go viral as wholesome now spark debate. The image is still there, smiling, charming, quirky, but the energy has changed. That's what happens when a public figure gets overexposed but underexamined. The illusion wears thin, the mystique fades, and suddenly the emperor's new clothes don't fit. Pedro Pascal may not be canceled. He may never face a reckoning. But what's happening now is something more subtle and far more permanent. He's losing the benefit of the doubt. And in an industry built entirely on perception, that's the beginning of the end. Because once the audience stops believing, the machine stops working. Pedro Pascal appears friendly, charming, effortlessly likable. But when you peel back the layers, when you really examine the interviews, the body language, the public behavior, the media response, what you find doesn't feel like a man. It feels like a manufactured persona, crafted carefully, protected fiercely, and projected endlessly. And maybe that's the real story here. Not that Pedro Pascal is secretly dangerous, not that he's evil or even intentionally manipulative, but that he's become a product, a perfectly marketable face for the values Hollywood wants to sell. An icon of emotional sensitivity, progressive social messages, curated awkwardness, and mass appeal. And when a person becomes a product, the lines start to blur. Where does the performance end and the truth begin? Vanessa Kirby's subtle discomfort, Sarah Paulson's stiffness, Dakota Johnson's unease, the silence from Disney, the media's refusal to criticize. All of it adds up to a feeling no one can quite explain, but no one can ignore. Something is off, and the real question is, how long can you wear a mask before it starts to crack?